to the final dissertation for me. The title of my defense today is going to be context-centric recognition using paralinguistic features of speech. Okay, so I'm going to move back and forth because Josiah is not here yet. Until he comes in, I'll stay in the front. Okay, so.
Do you need someone to? I can do that. Did you just tell me when?
Yeah, because Josiah will be coming pretty soon.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. So the problem statement that we are trying to solve was whether the computers can recognize emotions using the paralinguistic speech. Next. Yes, next please. So what's paralinguistic features?
Sounds like a UPS.
Nothing to do
No, I think it's just a phone. Just
That's
pick
a
it up
phone?
and
Oh, I think because of the sheet.
knocked it off. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Okay.
So in human daily life, it's known that speech has become an indispensable means to share ideas, opinions, as well as the emotion communications. And we can get the emotion communication expressed from the paralinguistic features. So we chose the paralinguistic features because a lot of times in human communications, we tend to express incomplete sentences, incomplete words, such as aha, oh, right, which has no semantic meanings. And sometimes also when it's accented or with emotionally charged expressions, it's going to be hard for us to understand the words, semantic meanings. And a lot of times also we tend to communicate over the phones, which lose the visual modality. So with the paralinguistic features recognition, we'll be able to recognize someone's emotions without the visual modality. And of course, paralinguistic is context, language independent. So we don't have to understand the language the speaker is speaking, and you'll be able to at least guess what kind of expression or emotion he or she is trying to express. Next, please. So for the past couple of decades, a lot of research has been done in different modalities using facial expressions, body posture, linguistic, paralinguistic, and as well as the semantic analysis. So in the early ages, a lot of researchers, they just work on one modality at a time and try to predict what kind of emotions the speaker is trying to convey or what kind of expression the speaker is trying to express. But as the research has become more mature, the researchers try to combine different modalities, and you can see that in the Zhang et al., and then Huang et al. So they tend to combine the visual with speech, or speech with linguistic and paralinguistics, and so on. And in the latest paper written by Rose and his team, they found out that 25% increase could be found in the research of the recognition study. And the good thing was that in the research in the deep learning, the scheme has been using, and then the research has been doubled almost every year since 2010. And then also other trends that we can find is listed there. One of them was that people try to recognize emotion instead of just using on one person. They try to find the emotion across the globe and try to predict the emotion in the real world scenarios that have been done in emoji-W competitions. And they use the deep learning architecture. And the last one is really interesting because Schuller and his teams predict and then also envision that in the future we'll be able to integrate all these modalities, the visual, the audio, and then other physiological textual input, and then make it as a deep fusion system in order to come up with different speaker characteristics. Because a lot of characteristics that belong to someone can be predicted by one sound or one kind of expressions, right? We can guess how old they are, their gender, and maybe their ethnicity, where they're coming from, and so on. So in the future, this is what things that we can see in the paralinguistic realm or paralinguistic domain. Next, please. So besides all those great research work, these are the competitions that have been done or have been happening on the AI areas. The first one is contact-based recognition workshop. It's a small workshops that have been done for the past 6 years. So in the context-based recognitions, I couldn't find any research specifically on the paralinguistic features. What they have done is a lot of work dealing with the visual as well as audio to recognize the emotions. Then we have the affect, MOTW, and interspeech. Out of all these competitions, I came across these two competitions, interspeech 2009 and 2013, that deal with the paralinguistic speech recognitions. In 2009, the first competitions of interspeech, they dealt with 5 emotion states. 2013, it deals with the 2000 emotion states. So these two competitions were the ones that we could directly compare, or at least relate our work with. Next, please. As I mentioned before, that in the past at least 6-8 years, the research in deep learning had at least doubled every single year. And in Schuler's latest paper from last year, he quoted that Walmer et al. Was the first work in the using deep learning system. And 2 years later, this one, and this was the latest one from using the deep learning mechanism. So as you can see, a lot of work have been done around this research, but what we've seen is a lot of them using different kind of purposes, different types of emotion, different kind of task analysis. For example, this one using arousal and valence and so on. Even though the accuracy were high, we cannot directly compare that because it's not apple-to-apple comparisons. So using this kind of comparison, we decided to go with the interspeech because interspeech was the venue where all the researchers from all over the world compete against each other using the same baseline, the same the same emotions as well as the same acoustic features. Any questions so far? Next, please. So to give some ideas about interspeech 2013, they had 4 different sub-challenges in social signals, conflict recognition, autism, and affect cognitions. And for affect cognitions, through the paralinguistic features, they divided into 2 subdivisions, the 2-class problem, detecting emotion using the arousal and valence dimensions, and also the 12-way category task. For our research, we try to compare our research or our work with this 12-way category task because we're interested in expanding from 12 emotions to a higher number of emotions. Next, please. Oh, one more thing. As you can see, can you go back, please? Go back, please. So basically, these were the accuracies from those competitions. It's not quite high, not quite low either. So what our goal is try to compete against these numbers and try to improve from that point on using our proposed mechanism. Next, please. So for interspeech 2013, they used the corpus called GMAP, Geneva Multimodal Emotion Portrayal. Basically, it had 10 professional speakers expressing gibberish in French. Nicole Ivan Sutmolen and Consemina Belang. So it's almost like that's the equivalency of the in English. And in order to enact the emotions, they use the felt enacting techniques. So when they did the recording, the director gave the actors the script or what kind of description that they want the actors to think of, and try to relate their previous experience and express the emotions. So their expressions were not only captured through the voice, but also from the facial expressions, body postures, and different modalities. So it's a huge database, and Benziger and Shell's team from Geneva, they analyzed all this data, and they to make sure that they come up with the authentic, plausible, and as well as the really trustworthy expressions that can be accepted along across the board.
You point out French speaking. Is there a significance to the fact that they were French, or that just happened to be the country where the work was done?
It just happened to be because they're in Geneva University, where Dr. Shell as well. Okay, next please. So, this was the number of audio files provided by GMAP. And then using our technique, we parse it and segment it and come out with 517. And I'll go deeper on the numbers later on. And then, originally the GMAP had about 18 emotions. But in here I only listed 17 because shame was not distributed due to the quality of the recording. So shame was not distributed to anyone, but they just kept it in their database. And for interspeech, they only work with 12. So the ones in red, they were the ones eliminated from interspeech because the data sparseness problem that's found in those emotions. So the eliminated ones were admirations, contempt, disgust, surprise, and tenderness. Next, please. As you can see, that a lot of work has been done in the field of after-cognition paralinguistic features. They are not too bad, they're not too good either. And then also the trend, we could see that many people are moving away from a single modality to multimodality. So we are trying to propose what kind of things can be done. So in order to break the ground, we want to integrate the context into paralinguistic cognitions, after-cognitions. So what should we do first? So as our initial process, we try to just to see, to get the feeling what it takes and then how it needs to be done and so on. So we just took the GMAP database and chose 5 emotions. And then we chose 5 specific features because they are related with the voice quality. They're also confirmed by psychologists. And then we segmented and extracted the data using easy aligned and CAD software. And then this data we ran using the KNN algorithm in order to come up with the emotions class. So this is basically the big picture of our architecture. So when we got the audio corpus, we segmented the audio using the part based on the word. And then we extract the features, those 5 acoustic features using easy aligned. And then I call it in the dissertation is a case for the entire 5 data. And then I use those and use the k equals to 3, 5, and 10 and ran the KNN classifier just to get the feeling what type of result we will get.
What distance function did you use for the
Euclidean distance. Okay, does that answer your question, right?
Yeah, I don't know that KNN is necessarily going to be a good choice for this sort of problem, right? Because it doesn't do very well with long feature vectors. So what's your feature vector length for this problem?
It's only like 5 classes.
No, the feature vectors, like the input for the K. I mean, you're classifying it into 5 classes, but what was the features?
So basically we have like 5 acoustic features.
Okay, so you have 5.
Yeah, 5 acoustic features.
Okay,
yeah.
I guess that is pretty short.
Yeah, it's really short one. We just want to get the feeling what it's gonna take. Because it's new research for me, I don't know what's gonna take. I just use a simple one at this stage, and then move on to the harder problem later on. Okay. So the next one, please. So using the KNN, we got the accuracy of 56.3 in average, right? Which is not really bad comparing to the result with interspeech 13, but at the face value. Remember that this competition work with 12 emotion, but us, we only work with 5 emotion at this stage. So at this, we just want to see where we are in terms of the performance-wise with our initial approach, with the current state of the art. And from this result, we guess, well, okay then, maybe we can start working with the 5 acoustic features and using the easy align and plot with word level segmentation. So maybe that's the guidance that we want, the research path that we want to take for this one. Next, please. So even though, like I mentioned before, that even though the KNN result was higher than the ones from interspeech, again, it's not the apple-to-apple comparisons because KNN only work with 5, interspeech work with 12, right? As you can see, the data can be imagined as really massive, right? Because it's not really clustered specifically. So we think, okay, we may need to work with some sort of sophisticated classifiers. So we propose the next research work. Next, please. So before we go further, we want to see first, okay, we want to study from human. How does human work with emotional cognitions? What kind of things that human analyze in order to come up with kind of judgments of what kind of emotions? So we did the human study. So we used still the same, the GMAT corpus. And then in GMAT corpus has description. So when they did the file enacting techniques, the director gave the descriptions written in French. So what I did was I translated them into English using Google Translator. And from those descriptions, I accepted 2 different contextual knowledge, action and relationship. So action is basically describing what kind of things the speaker is doing. And relationship is basically associating whatever objects around him or her with the speakers. And then for this research work, instead of working with 5, I chose Ekman's 6 universal emotions. Just want to see how humans react to emotions and cognitions using linguistic features. Next, please. So I designed this graphical user interface. So the research was done when the participant came to the room. They were given this GUI, and then they're given the headset, and then they're listening to the first one, the paralinguistic, the audio files, without having any contextual knowledge. So basically, they give, okay, this is the expression, guess what kind of emotion the speaker is trying to convey. So they have to choose from 17, and then the next one we give the contextual knowledge, either action or relationship in random order, and then the next one we give the other one. So from these 3 stages, we want to see what kind of changes we could see and observe. Will it be changing the values of our cognitions or accuracy of the cognitions for humans in this stage? So we have 2 different kind of F, no context, action context, and relation context next. No context, relationship context for the second one, and action context for the 3rd stage. Any questions so far? You look confused and in the book? No. Okay. Okay. Next slide. So basically, this is the research the result that we came up with. As you can see, for the non-context action and context, and then relationship context, we could see the trends that emotional cognition gets better as we give more information. The same also happens with the other directions: no context, relationship context, and two context. Right? But as you can see from relationship context, when we give the action context in here and here, we could see the sharp increase. So we studied, okay, maybe the action context or action knowledge, contextual knowledge could contribute more than the relationship context. This is what we studied from this human study. So, okay, so from this study, we say, okay, now we know action has more power in emotional cognitions than the relationship context does. Next, please. Okay, so after doing all this analysis, we try to come up with hypotheses. So what could we do then? So we know that from the human study that action plays important roles, and from the preliminary study, we know that the 5 acoustic features, and then segmented, and then using easy align and plot could be useful. So we try to come up with a hypothesis that we want to create a framework to recognize after cognition for paralinguistic features. It could improve the state of the art. And for this specific work, we try to compare our research with Interspeech 2013. As I showed before, that out of the competitions out there, only Interspeech 2009 and 2013 were the ones that were directly related with emotional cognitions. but since we are interested in the GMAP corpus, we focus on InterSpeech 2013. The question is, why did we choose the GMAP corpus? Because all of the database that will exist out there, only GMAP corpus has the scenario description. I tried to contact different professors and tried to ask whether they keep the scenario description. They said no, they don't have it. So the only GMAP corpus was the one who had the scenario descriptions. Since we're interested in the context modeling, we want to use the scenario descriptions for our purpose. So what would we do? So we did a two-phase study. The first study was we want to create a context-free approach where we want to see the performance of different classifiers using our initial process, using the acoustic features of 5 acoustic features, and use the path and easy lines, and then try to see what kind of result could we get from this study. And in order to make it simple, we try to utilize the weka. Next, please. And this is the result that we got from our first phase. For the 12 emotions, these were the numbers that we got. We got 32.8 results. Accuracy for the SVM, 39.5, 38, and 31.7. And then we just want to compare with the InterSpeech, and then basically these were the differences in a percentage point. And running the same kind of algorithms, but using 17 emotion, these were the numbers that we got. Any questions from this slide?
Yeah, so what deep learning architecture did you use?
Well, basically, I think the LSTM. I think I put in the screen capture of what's called the variables. So yeah, I'm not really an expert yet on the deep learning.
But I guess basically what an LSTM would be like working with like a series. So the other classifiers you've listed would be working with kind of a single feature vector, right? Like LSTM is like often like employed like using kind of a series of data. So
but isn't a series because we are combining different kind of acoustic, like series of.
Right. I mean, if you could definitely model this as kind of a series problem, but then it's kind of implicitly a little bit different than how what you've done for the other 3 classifiers, right?
Okay.
And so also, what ensemble learning system did you use?
Well, let me just show you the setup that we have in here.
Okay.
Because I put the screen capture.
Because like for instance, like Ada Boost as well is an ensemble method. So just saying ensemble isn't necessarily that informative.
Basically the ensemble, the Ada Boost, they're trying to compare, try to generate the weaker hypothesis in order to come up with a stronger hypothesis. So for the
What page are you looking at?
it's 252. So basically that's the 252 for the ensemble.
But you're saying that these are basically just standard choices in Weka.
That's right.
This is kind of Weka's choice on an ensemble.
Yeah, because our goal is just to try to see from this result what can we do to improve them.
Yeah, because you can do an ensemble with different base classifiers.
Yes,
So kind of the question was what base system, but it's okay. We can continue on if you don't know.
Yep. Okay. So any more questions? Okay, next. So from this phase 1, we conclude that our result were lower than the InterSpeech, but not too far from the InterSpeech. And then the question now is, what can we do? What can we do to improve those results? Right? So and in this case, we're trying to break the ground because not many work has been done in the contextual based affect recognitions. So we propose the context-based model. So next, please. So in humans, not only in humans, in every aspect of our life, for example, in linguistics, mentioning a word without knowing the context can be confusing. For example, the word for. We know the word for comes after 3 or before 5, right? But without knowing what kind of objects related with this for, it's just meaningless to most of us. But if we know that we're mentioning the word 4 books in the context of library, then it's easier for us to grasp the meaning. Right? So in Calvo and Mello, in their research survey, they give an idea that in human interactions, in the non-face-to-face scenarios, it's going to be really hard for us to recognize their emotions without knowing the contextual of conversations. Basically, that's a direct quote from their paper. And for psychologists area, Hess and Hareli, they also agree that contextual information is really needed in order for us to have a better judgment of our recognitions. So from this kind of background, we try to propose the contextual modeling. And in order to do it, we borrow the sentiment analysis dictionary. Next, please. And then basically we use the lexicons from Cooperman et al. Basically the Cooperman et al. Lexicon, it has about 14,000 non-domain specific words that have valence also, and then the dominance of factors. But since we're trying to study the effect of valence or arousal, or maybe since a lot of emotion theory focusing more on the valence and arousal, I just use those two variables, valence and arousal. And then in the lexicon from Cooperman et al., he gave the values from 0 to 9. Basically, for valence, 0 means unpleasant, and 9 means pleasant. For arousal, 0 means uncalmness, and 9 means calmness. So I try to correlate this coordinate system into our work. Next, please. So this is one example. So example of the keyword factors. I type the lottery, win, and receive in here, and this is for the affect factors. So what I did was I mapped the entire 17 emotions into the semantic space. This is what I call in dissertation. Okay, so basically I put everything in one semantic space and relate them and try to correlate them with our context modeling. Next, please. Any questions so far? So, in order to see the relationship between the word and then the affect, I just measure the Euclidean distance between the keyword and the sounding emotion. So, for example, for the word win, it's tightly related with the amusement. Give amusement and receive amusement. And the same thing with the lottery, I think.
Did you get these mappings from where?
From the coordinates from the Cooperman et al. Corpus. Yes.
Okay.
So basically, I just use those coordinates and then map it to that, and then try to find the is it really working that the lexicons, whether we can tie certain words with emotion or not.
Okay.
Right. So in order to confirm that, I just map it and then try to see it. And then it's meaningful, right? Lottery is correlated with the pride. So basically, these are some examples. You're laughing. The question?
No, it's just interesting, like lottery and pride.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
you.
Yeah, I
would have thought that.
Well, if you win, you're gonna be feeling prideful, but if you lose,
I mean, happy more. I would have said than prideful because it's not necessarily an accomplishment.
Yeah.
But
Thinking the numbers could be hard, maybe.
I guess if you've been doing this for 20 years, it maybe it is accomplishment.
I guess so.
well, this is the initial approach. I will go deeper on that one. Okay, so basically this is our initial approach to see and model the context and the emotions. Any questions so far? Next, please. So we propose our architecture. So we call it the audio files. We segment using easy lines. We extracted the data using the plot. Basically, we did it before in the KNN. And then next, we fed it to the classifiers. Right? Basically, these classifiers will give us some kind of values. The emotions as well as the probability. I will go deeper in the next slides. And then we feed this one to context modeling, combining the information from scenario and context database, and then produce the affect. Okay, we'll go deeper in the next slides. So, this is the first section over there. enclosed in the rectangle. So we extract the acoustic features and the classifiers, and the classifier will produce the affect as well as the probability of what kind of emotion that file is, that acoustic features is. So basically, the probability ranges from 0 to 1. So basically, the total sum of the P1 to P17 must be 1. And then basically, based on that one, what I did was we arranged the classifier results from the highest to the lowest, and then we pick the top result, and then basically that's where we are for the state. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. Next slide, please. So, as our initial approach, we don't know what kind of result we're gonna have. So I thought, okay, maybe let's say instead of having the context modeling for all different cases, is it possible for us just to exclude the case where the top two probabilities is quite high, right? Which means that the classifier is really confident that the answer is the right one. So what I did was I just subtract the highest two, and then try to see whether it's higher than a certain threshold. If it's higher than a certain threshold, then skip the context modeling. Otherwise, we're going to go to context modeling. Okay? We call it model number 1.
So the classifiers are outputting probabilities, their confidence about
Their confidence or confidence.
I see. So you're only limited to using classifiers that can produce that probability.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Does it answer your questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it's not the difference is not higher than a certain threshold. We do context modeling. Okay. So what we did was in the scenario description. Let me explain one by one. The scenario description is basically received from the GMAP database. We extracted 2 action words. And the context database is basically knowledge of surrounding our, just like knowledge of whatever surrounds us. For example, if I'm at UCF, basically we call context name as at UCF, and then what kind of emotion that then be expressed in UCF, maybe happy or sad, and also we have certain keywords. So basically, this is built by us. We have about 50 initial context database as our starting point of what might be happening around us. Okay, knowledge base. And then what we did was we just compare our scenario description, the keywords, the action words, with the context database using a simple approach, string comparison. And then we pick the match context, and then we come up with certain numbers of context that's matched between the scenario description with context database. Understandable up to this point?
So context database is from some corpora, or is it from?
No, we created our own.
What is it?
We created our own.
But looking at just from your thoughts or from studying some transcripts?
Well, I think from in humans, my idea was almost like a schema, And in human, we have certain kind of knowledge. So basically,
Concept hierarchies.
we basically just want to have certain kind of information internal to the system that we can use for our modeling approach.
Somebody said like UCF, the student is in a classroom or something.
Yeah, maybe a UCF student in the classroom, right? And then we're gonna
But
have
also there's a student union, maybe they go to the gym, or maybe they do other things, right?
That's right. And maybe in the gym there's gonna be maybe in the gym bathroom, or maybe gym in the track or in the weightlifting area, right? So it's big areas. But now I just limit into 50 context information. Any questions up to this point before we go to the next one? Okay, next slide, please. So from that match context, I find the intersection between our classifier result, almost like the same one before model number 1, and then the intersection between the two, I get it from here, and then I calculate the distance between the whatever emotion that we have over there, listed here, with the keywords, the scenario description keywords that we originally had. Okay, and then basically pick the emotion with the shortest distance, and then basically that's the kind of emotion that the speaker is trying to convey.
And the distance is on that valence arousal map?
That's right. Yeah. So basically we use all the valence and also all the coordinate system from the Any questions so far?
So couldn't you have a word that could have very different valences in different situations? Or arousal?
Well, for example,
for example, this isn't a very good example probably, but somebody might know two people with the same name. One person is a really good collaborator, and the other person is horrible, and just
that's right. That's basically the relationship, right?
yeah.
Right now, I'm just trying to focus on the actions.
Yeah, but I would think that there might be words like that too.
I
that have
agree.
similar meanings depending on. So
Whether you like someone or
Or
the other
chocolate
one.
cake. I mean, like someone likes it, but someone does not. So.
Yeah. Or maybe,
oh,
for example, like
cilantro.
Cilantro.
Yes.
Some people think it's a spice, other people think it tastes like soap.
Yes.
Right?
or maybe boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe they just have a fight, right?
Yeah, it could be time
Right?
dependent.
It's gonna be a lot of things,
Right.
but I'm trying to simplify the action words for right now.
So is it the keywords that you're the keywords that you're using in the space? Is that a static thing or is that a dynamic thing?
Right now it's only static, only two.
I mean the mapping of where the words are in that space. Is that's static?
Yes, should be static. Right now it's static, yes. Basically we have two keywords,
Okay.
and then we got the valence and also
Oh,
coordinates.
you're mapping it to the emotion which is in the.
In the emotion, yeah. Basically everything's going to the
Okay.
semantic space.
Sorry, I was thinking you were mapping it to other words in
No.
the space. Okay. Never mind.
It's going to be interesting with research also,
Okay.
that what happens
Yeah.
if we add another word into it, right? Right.
Yes.
So, but right now I just focus on the action words. Can
Okay.
we do something about it, or
Yeah,
can the
sorry.
result be improved?
I was thinking that you were mapping it to other related words on the valence arousal map, and I thought that those words shouldn't be fixed, but you're mapping to emotion, so
Yes.
never mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
not yet. Yeah. Okay. Any questions so far before we move forward? Okay. Next slide, please. So before we end the task, we just ask ourselves these three questions. What can our shares be parsed? Basically, that's the architecture that we're proposing, context-based paralinguistic after recognition system. Can we do something to the previous result of the classifiers? And the next one, do we really need to include the model number one, whether we just want to differentiate the differences between the top two results from the classifiers? And then since we only work with the two action words, how sensitive the keywords were? So basically, these were the three initial questions that we asked ourselves before running the test. So the next slide, we are running 4 different phase stages of experiments. The first experiment setup, the stage number 1, we just want to understand different values of TH and X. TH stands for the threshold, and X is basically how many results we want to focus on, right? For example, we have 17 emotions, so if we want to focus the entire 17 results, we just give X equals to 17. If we just want to work with the top 5 emotions from the classifiers, X is 5. Okay? So next slide, please. So in order to come up with different values of TH and X, I ran different kind of tests. So for these 4 different classifiers, basically in here, as you can so remember that the result for the classifiers is around maybe 30%. So it's always coming on the top, the first position, right? But if we go with the second position, the accuracy is getting better. So basically for this one, for the SVM, the 60% of the result in SVM. In Adabus, 60% of the results were in the top 2. And so on, right? So looking at this result, we just decided to come out with using the different kind of value of X's and TH. X equals to 10, 5, 10 and 5, and a TH of 1 and 1.
But couldn't you have effectively, your threshold and X are kind of hyperparameters. I mean, why not just do this using kind of a cross-validation procedure where you do kind of a holdout validation set and then you kind of test the values of the different parameters
Well,
on that?
we ran, for our second stage, we ran different kind of values also.
Okay,
Because we want
so
to
you
see.
did do this?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, this is still our initial approach. Okay? So, any questions so far up to this point? The next stage, the next class. Okay, so basically for the first stage, we ran 4 different experiments. Experiment number 1, pH of 1, x equals to 10. So basically we could see the improvement accuracy in the module number 2 for all those emotions. And we also could see that the results were reduced from the first classifiers. Okay? Despair was taught as anxiety, joy was taught as pleasure, and also surprise, relief was taught as interest, and so on. Okay? So from these experiments, we thought, okay, so the scientific pulse looks good, right? But the positions of the keywords could mess up the result. That's what we try to analyze from this first experiment in stage 1. Okay, next experiment. So after that, we tried to run the second experiment, and we saw different kind of improvement, almost the same as the first experiment, but the relief gets better because we narrowed down from 10 search space to 5 search space. Okay. So basically, this is what we study from this experiment. The one on the underlines basically is being reduced from the first experiment, but still in the positive sense compared to the classifier. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide. So for the third one, we changed the T threshold to 0.5 and X to 10. So as you could see, that more emotions were eliminated if you compare the results from experiment 3 with experiment number 1. The cause of ones were the ones eliminated in here. And then from here, we saw that by reducing the threshold from 1.0 to 0.5, more cases could go to the model number 2. In some cases, it could give a good result. In some cases, it could give a bad result. Any question so far? Any question? No? Okay. Next. And then finally, this is the TH equals 0.5 and X equals to 5. So this is basically our study. We basically says that classification accuracy for 5 emotions were reduced, and those are the emotions whose accuracies were reduced by changing the TH 0.5 and X equals to 5. So basically, in this stage, we just ran 4 different experiments with 4 predefined TH and X. Okay, next.
But sorry, which was the winner of the 4 combinations?
What's
I
that?
guess which of the combinations was the best?
I'm gonna go to the next slide.
Okay.
So basically, from our study, the TH equals to 1 is the best case for experiments 1 and 2. From our first case, because we could get a higher accuracies. Okay.
Wasn't there a second parameter you were checking?
Well, the TH and X.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, okay.
So what was the conclusion about X?
Well, I'm going to show you in the second phase, because in the second phase I ran maybe 20 experiments.
Okay.
So basically, I can
This
show
is
you
only looked at the threshold.
only the TH and X, threshold and X value.
Okay, maybe you should continue.
Yeah, then let's go for something. We can see that one. Next, please. So basically, this is our experiments using different value of TH and different value of X. Okay. Basically, for the yellow one, X was 10, different value of TH. We could see as the TH increasing, the accuracy is going higher for the yellow one, the X equals to 10. The same valid for the blue one when X equals to 11. But when we change the X equals to 12 and 17, the accuracies went down here, lower, but still showing the same pattern that as we TH going higher is still getting better. But when X is going higher, the curve is going down.
But basically, this looks like the winning combination is like TH 0.9 or TH1 and X of 10 or 11.
Perfect. Yes, that's right. So basically, that's our next stage of experiment. So basically, from this experiment, we conclude, okay, I think this is going to be giving us a good result. That TH equals to 1 and X equals to 11. Okay, next slide. So to confirm, okay, so basically this is our conclusion for stage number 2. That, okay, we don't need the model number 1 because it's confirmed that when TH equals to 1, the accuracy is going to be the best ones. Okay? Then we end the third stage of experiment. So basically this is the best scenario when TH equals to 1 and X equals to 11. It's not too much different. This one's like 3.307. I think for X equals to 10, it was like 305 or 306. Not too much different from this best case scenario. Okay, so from this stage number 2 experiment, we conclude that we don't need TH model number 1, and X equals to 11 is our optimal value. Okay, that gives the best accuracies. Any questions so far? So, to answer our next questions, how sensitive is our keywords, right? Because in this study we only use 2 action keywords, right? So in stages number 1 to 3, what I did, I just like look at the scenario, just try to pick the keywords that at least describe the words, the scenarios, without knowing how close they are, what emotion they're expressing, and so on. So that's what I did for stages number 1 to number 3. But for stages number 4, I try to see the ground truth, right? And try to pick the keywords that's close to the ground truth. I know it's cheating, but I just want to see what's going to be the effect to our CXB class, right? So for this next phase of experiments, I just picked the emotion: amusement, anxiety, and relief, right? So basically, from stages 1, it was this result. For amusement, I used figure, laugh, and then the accuracy was 22 out of 37. Anxiety, 4 out of 40, 4 out of 37 for relief. But for amusement, when I changed the figure to create, because create is closer to amusement, the accuracy went up to 36. The same goes with anxiety. I changed trouble to distress, and suspect to arise to relief. Okay, so I just want to find some words that's really tight or close to relief and try to see what kind of performance we could get from this experiment. Remember, I only focus on 3 emotions. Okay. So from this study, we saw that improvement from 53% to 58.4%, and we intelligently selected the keywords. That's the term that we chose for amusement, anxiety, and relief. Any questions up to this point?
So you only had 58%. It looked like some of them were 36 out of 37. Isn't that a lot higher?
Well, basically that's the only for 3 emotions out of the 17 emotions.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if I change everything, it's going to be close to 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions so far? So basically, in summary, right, what have we done, right? So initially, we ran the human study. The human went through 3-stage process. They listened to the acoustic, the audio files without knowing the context, given either the actions or the relationship keywords for context. And the second step, and second one, we gave another information. So using the sound only, human was able to recognize emotions by 90% accurately, which is not high, right? That's the problem that human has, and it's been confirmed with so many research out there on how accurate humans can predict emotions. When we combine the sound and action context, then basically it went up to 39%. Okay? So from this study, we developed our system. The initial approach, we did the KNN. The accuracy was 56%, 56.3%. And then for Adabus, which was the highest one among all the classifiers that we developed, we got 39.5% accuracy using the 12 emotions. With summative emotion, it went down as expected, 29.5%. And basically, this is the number from Adabus. So we're comparing 39 to 42.3%. You're looking at maybe 2.8 percentage point difference. And then using our CXB parse with random keywords, we got this accuracy, and with intelligently selected keywords, in the phase 4 of experiment, we got the 58.4% accuracy. So our system was able to improve from 29 to 53%. Okay, next slide. So in order to conclude and to answer our previous research questions, so can the CXB parse improve the classification result? Yes, it's shown that it's improving. But do we need the module number 1? No, we don't. And how sensitive? It's really sensitive, right? If I change the entire keywords, we could get the accuracy of 100% easily. But I would like to explore that further for my future research. Next. So basically, this is the research direction that I want to take in the future, because I would like to automate the audio segmentation and acoustic feature extractions. And hopefully in the future, I can be part of the team who can develop these affect cognitions into a daily life. We can integrate that with the smartphone. And then maybe we can use different kind of keywords and try to match with different kind of adjective. Or instead of just focusing on the verb, we can focus more on the adjective, adverb, and so on, and make it more dynamic, like you say. And then also wants to use a more dynamic context-based database to make sure that it can be applied in different kind of settings. If we can add, delete, modify, and so on. That's basically the direction that I want to take in the future. Any questions?
All right, let's start. Danny, do you have any final questions for Andreas?
Where are you thinking that this will go in terms of application-wise? You mentioned smartphone. Are you thinking that that Siri is going to make her decisions based on her analysis of your emotions too, or?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting, because can you go to I think I have the slides that I didn't show to you.
Okay.
No, keep going to the end. Keep going. Well, no, this one.
This one?
Yeah. No, this one, the other one.
Next one.
This one, yeah. So basically, I'm hoping that we can just get the information from the smartphone,
Okay.
and then try to send the signals to different kind of gadgets that we have. And then try, for example, send maybe from because the phone is the closest one to us, right? So I think the phone is the only one that can get the data more accurately. Once the phone knows what kind of emotion that, for example, it's my phone, recognizes my emotion, this device can send to whatever signals are on it. Then try to maybe, for example, if I'm at home, if I'm angry, maybe they can change the music, right? Maybe Google is gonna play more like classical music, like okay, play Beethoven, right? Play whatever music I like, right? Or maybe if I'm really happy, I'm gonna make maybe more melancholic music. If I'm cooking, so it's applicable to different kind of.
Or Amazon will suggest to purchase
What's that?
when we're in a good mood or something, I guess.
Special bill.
Yeah.
When we win the lotto.
Yeah. So basically, that's the application that can be done.
The point that he's trying to make is that in reality, using the description of the scenario that was included in GenNet is not realistic, because you're not going to get that when you're trying to figure out automatically the emotion felt by somebody. However, you could get a lot of that information from your cell phone calendar, from your GPS location, from if you're meeting with somebody. Let's say you have a meeting scheduled with your boss, or you have a date with your girlfriend or boyfriend. Your calendar might know that. So you might be able to model the context from the information contained in a cell phone. And that could be realistic. He didn't do that because he had the GenNet database that actually had a description of the scenario. And no other database had a description of the scenario. So we couldn't model the context. from any other database. But the idea would be, how would you translate that to the real world? And the answer would be, well, maybe the cell phone has enough information in it to allow one to model the context properly.
Well, now with the Fitbits, you also get
Heart
physiological
rate, yeah,
information that
physiological,
might give you a lot of
That's right.
information on that.
Yes. Fitbit and also maybe from the Google speakers, right? I'm not sure whether we can get any data from
Oh,
that.
you mean from what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like recognizing
Yeah.
words and what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Perhaps, yeah.
I'm not sure whether Google has the kind of capability. I don't have this Google speakers, but it's really nice to integrate this kind of module to our human life, our human daily life.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Oh.
Any more questions?
No, that's it.
Gina?
So did you ever do any kind of analysis of the relative importance of the new features that you introduced?
The new features. I mean, like different acoustic features or kind of features?
I mean, you've introduced these new kind of context-based features, right?
Yes.
So I guess like, did you ever like try? So the features used by the machine learning algorithms, did you ever employ any kind of feature selection or kind of ranking to see how much each of the features were improving the classification performance?
Can you try to rephrase the questions, please? I don't get the questions.
So I guess let's go back. So you're putting a feature vector into your classifier.
That's right.
What's in your feature vector?
Basically, it's like the actions, action keywords.
No, not for the classifier.
Oh, for the 5 acoustic features. The
Right.
jitter, shimmer, that's right.
So I guess like one question, I guess the question is, did you ever then kind of look and see how much each of the different features contributed to the classifier performance? So you used 5 features, but you could have used 3 or 4 or
No.
what?
Well, basically, I used those 5 because those were the ones related with the focal quality. And then I didn't eliminate one of them, or maybe. So to answer your questions, no.
Okay.
Yeah. So but I'm staying with 4 or with 5 because our acoustic features that we chose each much less than what InterSpeech is using. I think they're using more like a couple hundred features.
Right, yeah, you've
Yeah.
already reduced this set.
Yeah, so
like
basically
quite a
we
bit.
reduce. So
I
I
guess
mean,
I was just trying to figure out, is there like some feature in the set that's more predictive of, but you didn't do anything.
no, I didn't. It's really interesting to study because I mean I can show you the can you go back this one? No, this one. Because I put basically this just to give you some ideas what the data looks like. So she's being jumbled all over places. So I mean I think what
are
you
all
just
those dots?
what's that?
What are all those dots?
Basically those are the data. Basically this is the pitch, the jitter, and then the shimmer. The pitch, jitter, and the shimmer. So I mean I think it's a good study for me to do for the future one. Try to see if I can narrow down from 5 to something maybe like 3, or because the computational time might be much faster. Right? So I think that's what the question that you're asking, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So, but from InterSpeech, if you compare the acoustic features from there to ours, it's much
Right,
much
you're new.
much lower. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So are those multiple words that are amusement? Like there are lots of red dots.
Yes, basically we have like a different kind of cases. I think 579 cases.
Okay.
So basically, I try to map in Weka. This is the
Okay.
best one I could get.
Okay.
So it's not really, that's not a clustered group. So yeah.
And sorry, some of the emotions are related, I would think, right?
Yes.
Because you said that if you pick the right words, you got closer. And it might just be that you picked the words for another, initially used the word that related to another emotion.
Yes.
If you were to, could you classify emotions that are similar, and would the classification be better if you grouped emotions that were in a close region as maybe a single?
Well, I think the original reason why the GMAP was created was because they're interested in differentiating more subtle emotions.
Okay.
So for example, I think irritation and angry, I think.
Right, irritation
Right?
and anger
Irritation
are
and
similar.
angry or something because originally they started with 6 Ekman's emotion, but they expanded to more subtle emotions because a lot of the research have been done all over with the Ekmans. So they want to go towards more subtle emotions and how to differentiate those.
Okay. And surprised is an emotion?
In the paper, yes.
Okay,
Well, Ekman's emotion, Ekman's also acknowledged that as emotion.
it's
right?
an emotion,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry.
So, Rita, anything else?
Right.
Ron?
So one place this can go, I think it'd be interesting to try to learn those contexts. I think Brian had did some, I think like you said, you have this auxiliary information, it'd be interesting to do that. But amazing amount of analysis, and like question was trying to connect paralinguistic cues to what you did in context and to end. Can you answer that question?
Can you
I mean, I saw a lot with when you had particular keywords and so forth,
Mhm.
but paralinguistics specifically, I didn't see specific how you made these connections.
linguistic. Well, basically we tie each emotions with certain scenarios, right? And the certain scenarios they have the keywords, right? So basically that's the relationship between the acoustic features.
Okay, so just from my understanding, you would call some filled utterances or sounds that the speaker may have made or emotions as a keyword. They become mapped to keyword, or keyword is a
No, basically what
from the corpus of the actual text.
Yes. So basically for the corpus they have a certain number of sound files, right?
Okay.
And then they have the sound file they have the ground truth already from their study. Okay? So for each sound file we have certain scenarios. So in order to come up with the context modeling process, we extract the action keywords from these scenarios.
So like I went, uh-oh, what is the keyword for that?
Well, depending on what kind of sound file is that, right? So let's say if there's maybe happy, right? I'm gonna use the
Word
happy.
or something.
Well, I don't use.
Concern.
Well, I
I
don't
don't know you did the 17, but
because I don't use the semantic meanings of the words expressed by the speakers. I just use the scenario in order to come out with the context modeling process. Does it answer or no?
I think so. So the mapping is done ahead of time before you analyze the context, right? I guess is my.
Well, basically the mapping can be done on the fly also, because basically we have all the coordinates of 14,000 keywords. So.
Because probably these are something that's dynamic.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the human interaction.
Like you said, if you're happy to whatever.
Again, you have to tie with different kind of scenarios. Maybe if I talk with my professor,
Yeah. Sure.
Right. So there's a lot of things going on there.
So how do people deal with that in the literature? How do will they look at this dynamic aspect, or is not really the research, right?
I haven't seen the research yet. They just look at the static. It's not really a continuous process yet.
Yeah.
As far as I've seen, I think our work was the couple, maybe the first one, combining the context with the paralinguistic. But it's really good. I think a good working ground for me to continue to see where this one can bring us to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One other question.
Go ahead, please.
Have you heard of, so there's this effect, I found it, people have shown that sometimes people will associate words and other characteristics. So have you heard of that effect of the booba and the kiki effect?
No.
So
How you spell it?
so what they did was they took these two shapes,
Mm-hmm.
and they said one is called booba and one is called kiki.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of significant difference of people would assign kiki to the one that's short and booba to the one that's sharp and booba to the one that's not sharp.
Mm-hmm.
So they're illustrating that people have associations of, like other types of associations with either words or sounds. It's not clear if it's because of the word or the sound, but they're associating the sound or that word kiki with something sharp more likely
Okay.
than something round.
So from anthropology, a lot of language originated from sound, supposedly. The anthropologists
Okay.
claim these things. That
Oh, so maybe the
it was
language
actually like a
came
vocalization of the
of the
experience.
shape,
Or the shape or whatever
Yeah.
you experience.
right?
Interesting, right?
Yeah, that would make sense. Then that would explain why.
I've read that before when I.
Because it
Look
goes
at it.
across different languages and cultures as well.
That's right, yeah.
But anyway, it was just an interesting effect
That's
that
right.
But
might,
this, to me, lends credence to the importance of affect in
right,
natural language processing because it's actually the origins
that's true.
of some of the representations that we rely on. In some way. I think it's a very valid point.
Anyway,
Yeah,
it
it's
just
really
seemed like
nice.
it's related,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if it would
I've
have any
never heard
effect.
that one, no.
Well, apparently there's a Wikipedia page on it. So.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that.
Yeah.
Must be, yes, it must be around for a while.
It's been around for a while, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, that was it.
Anything else? The visitors? Any questions? Then everybody out, except the committee. You can turn that off, please. Don't forget.